Hello. One of my patrons got in touch and asked, do you have any plans to do a full run through on the new studio setup? I'm getting a garden room built in May and June and I'm looking to get some inspiration for equipment, presentation and storage. How is it all set up and arranged? How have you got these things on lips? And what's this IKEA thing underneath and how does it work? Well, Mo, I will tell you in this video. I spent a solid week and a bit setting this up after another solid week of initially putting it in and changing it around many times. It has been a massive amount of work to set this up. So yeah, let me explain. Basically, what you're looking at is two Jaspers stands. This is a sort of square kind of boxy Jaspers. I'm not sure of the model number, but it's off-the-shelf unit as such. And then the keyboards are on another Jaspers, an A-frame style stand. And basically on the left, I have a server rack that I bought off eBay. This is literally for server equipment, but I think I got it for like £50 or something like that. It came unassembled, I put it together and it's on casters. And this is important because it means that I can pull this entire unit out and access the back of the patch bays and all the equipment. So it's possible for all this to out, be accessed. I actually have to climb underneath the stand to do it and move this out of the way and I can push it all back. And the sort of overall like principle of how it works, just to explain the setup, is that all of the synthesizers and the various machines run into the patch bays at the back. And that means that their sockets are accessible on the front. And I've used Normaling to send them into this Midas 320, which is a really nice analog desk, really for live, but I use it for recording. And then that then goes to the speakers. And the idea is that I record the stereo output from the Midas to my audio interface. It goes into my Universal Audio actually via this Audient. And I just record a stereo output. In terms of MIDI, I currently have the Push 3 because I've been doing some videos for Ableton, but my plan is that there's going to be a circle on here. I have a circle on just sat in a drawer, and literally for years I've been waiting to fully set this up. And I'm in a garden room here too. And this has been a pretty efficient way to have half of my studio. This is not everything. I've still got more setup to do, and there'll be videos that I'll explain, that I'll create later. So basically, all the gear goes on these racks. Now, you asked about the kind of shelving. And yeah, basically what this is actually... can you see it's OSB? These are boards of OSB that I had lying around after we'd built the studio, and I have these like little runners, which are little sort of wooden pieces that were left over after doing cladding. And basically it's super dumb. I just cut the strips and I wood glued and screwed them in. And there's some of the screws protrude on the other side. But yeah, what this allows you to do is kind of what we have here, where you can have desktop gear on the sort of rails that you have, you know, on Jaspers. It's a quite efficient way of doing it. And I use the same thing down here where I have the Mod Wave and the Op6. You know, they've got this difficult lippy front on them. It's not ideal, even that slips off, but it helps retain the gear. So I definitely recommend using that as a way of like having multiple things. You can see that I've got Grandmother and MS-20. And it works pretty well. I had some people on Reddit who were like, oh, you can't even access that. And you kind of can. I have to reach up. This is high and inconvenient, but it's not impossible. So something like the Grandmother is very simple. And then over here I have the Cascadia, and it's presented towards me. You can see you can have a little one. It's quite nice that you've got that gap between this and the MS-2000. So, you know, you can build little ones. This is also here using a bit of the flooring that the studio is floored with. This is cork flooring. And I had spare pieces of cork, so I glued little strips onto this as well. So yeah, what else to say? MIDI wise, we've established, yeah, sorry, I forgot to say, I actually have a MIDI in here. Can you see in there? That's a MIDI splitter, so that I can have just the one output of push going to multiple things. When the Circlon's in here, the Circlon's got 5 MIDI outputs, so you don't really need a splitter, but you did need one for the push. But that is our way that one device can actually address all 16 channels, because obviously you have to make a whole in, out, through chain. I am making a video for Ableton where I will talk about how this is set up, and that is actually genuinely useful information. So, oh, what's the IKEA thing? This is the, like, kids, like, whatever it is, it's, oh, no. It's not Kallax, it's, someone please correct me. I will link it below, but it's the kind of kids storage system. And I organise my cables, short jacks, medium jacks, and long jacks. And then I have XLRs and sort of variants. And then in here I have power supplies. God, that's absolutely like straining at the heels. More power supplies and sort of DIY stuff. Yeah. Oh, the lighting and how it turns on. This is quite important. Do you remember I made a video about the 20-second rule? That's the rule that BT has, which is that if it takes more than 20 seconds to switch your studio on and start making music, you probably won't. So that rule is observed in this setup, and that's because down here, I have lots of plugs in here. There's 2 plugs here. I flick those, it turns this whole rack on. I have, behind the scenes, I don't think you can see them, but I've bought these 2 of these absolutely monstrous 20-socket expanders, like 20-way plug sockets. I have 2. I have one like cable tied to the back of this unit. I have another one cable tied to the thing. I also have things like power cable tied to the underside of this rack, so that if I want to power things and swap these out, the sockets are all there, they're all off the floor. That was very important. As I redid my like computer zone recently, I say mostly have power off the floor so that I can hoover underneath, because it's very easy to end up in a situation where you have 42,000 power sockets on the floor and you can't hoover. So that use of those sockets means that everything can be powered on. I do also have a Power Bright thing, Samsung Power Bright, which is fine. The lights aren't very good on it though. I don't know if there's a problem with them. And so this means that I push these sockets. I come under here. Oi, oi. There we go. Boom, boom, boom. This all comes to life. And then over here, I have some sockets down here as well. Just like that. Now that's 6. 2 here, 2 here, and 2 there, and now everything's on. Actually, the lights. Let's have some light, shall we? See how I cable tied these? These are just cable tied. These lights, by the way, these are made by a company called Hay, H-A-Y. It's Danish. They're like 50 quid each, so they're a bit expensive, but they definitely add vibes. They, unfortunately, are really bright. And so I found it almost overwhelming when I had them turned like this. This is their sort of default state. Maybe it's not too bad here in the kind of with all the studio lights on. But here, let me just turn the studio lights off, 1 sec. Sexy. But unfortunately, yeah, like that's quite bright. It probably doesn't look it in the video. And so what I did was I turned them around, and around the back of them, all that's inside this is actually an LED strip. There you go, it's adjusted. So you can see there is this sort of black line, which, trust me, it makes it more pleasant to look at. You can get loads of other people make them. I'm sure there's much cheaper ones that are dimmable where you can change the colours. You can't change the colours, you can't dim these, they just are what they are. I probably should talk a bit about the modular here, by the way, and I've got two Arturia rack brutes. So chosen because they're just a good size. They fit on these like runners really well. They're not too deep, blah, blah, blah. And my idea was to have a bit of modular in here that I could control as part of this setup. And I want to have like my sequencing stuff kind of right to hand, a couple of other bits and bobs right to hand. This iPad is here so that I can use editors for things, the patch base editor, so that I can edit things like the TG55, although even is the TG55 editable. But the TX7 is editable. That is a rack mount desktop DX7. I do have a real DX7, but it needs a battery change. And so that will allow me to edit it there. And you will need to use a MIDI merge to merge it. Actually, no, I won't, because the Circlon can merge and send its data onwards. The other one is the mighty TG77. Right, let's talk about the speakers. And basically, these are Genelec 8020s, and they are hanging. The company who make this is Small Rig, and you can get them off Jeff Bezos's mom and pop store. But basically, it's a Small Rig clamp. And if we look, we can see that they are basically tensioned with a screw thread. So while that is literally hanging off of this pipe, this will only open if this unscrews. So mechanically, it is a phenomenally strong joint, and this tightens. And on the bottom of Genelec speakers, there is a tripod screw thread, which is what this has, because it's effectively the same as a camera. So I can hang quite heavy Genelecs off of this stand, and they are not coming off. The thread on the Genelecs is designed for this purpose. The stands, like clamps, are designed to hold it. And same company make this clamp, which is by far my favorite piece of camera equipment. It can also be used to hold small screens and lights, of course. So yeah, highly recommended. What else? Oh, the tables as well. This is a piece of OSB, again, that I cut. And I cut the piece so that it will hold the mixer and also give me this extra lip. This is just the right depth to have a Circlon on it. You can put a Circlon here. And you also need a keyboard. I'm hoping I can fit one up there, a little one. And yeah, it's like a little sort of battle station that you can sit in and make music with. It's a whole thing. And when there isn't a C-stand there, then you can scoot along here and you can still access the front and set things up and reach down and tweak things. Not ideal, but you kind of have to compromise a bit. Ideally, everything would be like here in terms of height. Everything will be around me in a big U shape. But this room has to accommodate a place for computers and shooting videos and all kinds of other things. So this just has to fit flat against the wall. And it works pretty well. Like, I've not had any issues so far. Actually, there is one issue, which is that the H3000 has the quadriverb above it and it's overheating. I'm noticing it's starting to click itself off. So I've had to turn it off and I need to rejig it so it's got airflow above. There are grills above it. It needs to be cooled. Yeah. Make it so that it's really all set up. Make it so that everything's available on the patch bay and make it so that you can turn it all on within 20 seconds and you vaguely stand a chance. I also would just say as a final thought that there is so much stuff in this rack already. You know, this is too much really for one setup, and my theory here is that I don't use everything all at once. It's not about using all the spices in your spice drawer. A chef will choose a few spices, a few herbs to go in the meal, and that's what you should do with this type of setup. And I have like some thoughts that I'm forming about ways to force myself to do that, to perhaps just use 3 things when you make music. And so this might mean that I choose 3 synthesizers and perhaps I sample them into my sampler and so forth. Yeah, you kind of need to, because the point here is not to use all this at once. The point is to have it so that I can use any of it at a moment's notice, but not all at once. But my problem is that if I don't make it so that I can use it, if I have to like fish it out of a drawer and set it all up, then the likelihood is I won't. I want to be frictionless when I make music. That's the most important thing. That's why the 20-second rule exists. That's why you bother to patch things into a patch bay and so on and so forth. You do that to make it greasy when you actually want to make music, so that you can really quickly throw things together. And that includes things like setting up a template in the push and also in the Circle-On. The Circle-On has a thing where you name devices and set up the MIDI channeler on. So you, on the Circle-On, you can say, I want my Mini Freak, and it will pop up and it will be on channel 9 or whatever. You can see, by the way, that I have actually labeled the channels on everything, so I know what they are. Guess what? That's channel 1, because you can't change the channel on an MS-20. Not a great move. Should have made it so you could do that. Anyway, good luck with your studio. Hope you have a lot of fun, Mo. Catch you with the next one. Bye.